will always have your back.
LAPD, drop your weapon!
First of all, let me just say congratulations on the show. From what I've managed to watch so far, I really like the, and this is a compliment, it doesn't feel like Bosch.
Oh, great.
I love Bosch, and I thought it would be a mistake to try and do a retread. So I think there's like a lightness of touch to it. I love the dynamic between the characters. Was it important for you to create a show that existed in that world that could easily exist like in its own right?
Yeah, I mean, thanks for your honesty. I really, I'll take it because, I didn't set out to make a Bosch. I definitely, we're 10 years past, when Bosch started. So we're moving into a new decade of television, right? And so we have to elevate and we have to approach it very differently. And I think that obviously the inspiration for the universe is there, and Michael creates that. He gives you this really strong source material, but where we take it is up to us. And I think that we all agreed, Michael Connelly and the producers alike, we all agreed when we sat down before I even took this, that if we weren't doing something different, then what are we doing? And because we all agreed on that, I thought, yeah, this will be fun, to find, like you said, our place within a place.
And obviously every character you play in your career, is created by a writer in some form. But when a character like Ballard has so much history of their own, how do you approach that, knowing that, you've got thousands of readers out there who've got their own take on what they see their Ballard as? I
know. I try not to think about them in the best way. Only because... oh, God, I can only do what I do. And I obviously work very closely with Michael Connelly. And I look to Michael for, the wink or the head nod of approval of where I'm taking it. I need that trust and I need his support in that way. And because I've gotten it in the way that I have, I thought, okay, I must be doing something right because the man, I have his blessing on where this is going. And so that's meant a lot to me. So hopefully with Michael Connelly's, nod and blessing in all of this, the fans will feel the same way. They're obviously going to have very strong feelings about how we portray. I mean, everyone who loves the books does. And you know what? Great. Bring it. I want to hear it all.
A question I wanted to ask was about Ballard herself rather than the show. And
yeah, okay.
In your mind, what is it that makes Ballard tick? What's a successful day at the office like for her? Is it just solving cases or is there more to it than that?
I think with all of these people, fortunately and unfortunately, there's a thorn that's pushing them out into the world, right? There's a void that they have to fill. And I think part of what pushes us out into the world, especially when it comes from either trauma or a gaping hole, can be very beneficial to others, to the public, if you work in public service. And, being mentored by these detectives and seeing, who they were and what they went through and seeing their different motivations, I see a lot of the underlying motivation being that, they're either, number one, running towards something that is very hard to face. And so it all comes from seeking, but that seeking comes from, again, this emptiness. And like I said, that becomes very beneficial. And specifically in talking about Ballard, she is, told to go see this shrink because she feel that she's got her own problems. And, the shrink is saying, it's interesting that you ended up here in cold cases because you have this mystery of your father's death that never got solved. And so it feels like you're sort of chasing something. And Ballard's pissed. She's like, you're reaching, you're just this psychobabble and, and I don't need this bullshit. And the reality is she is running from something and running towards something that she needs answers on. And I think a lot of them have that. And so, what makes her tick? I think that, I think question marks make her tick. I think sadness makes her tick. And I think that also her integrity, too, makes her tick.
From what I've read, I'm a big Bosch fan, so I've tried to devour as much as I can, just
oh, cool.
People's opinions, features, all these kind of things. And is it Mitzi Roberts that's the
Yeah.
the inspiration, the coordinator,
Yeah.
what is it that you've learned from her that was most beneficial that you brought into the show? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of inspiration you take
Yeah.
from there. She'll be a
Yeah.
great person to learn from.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Is she ever? And our relationship has evolved into this really organic, every time she texts me, she's like, sister. It's the feeling, we're very similar. And it's funny because I went to her retirement party and I met her mom for the first time at that party. And her mom looks at me, after, we're sitting together for 15, 20 minutes with this exchange. And her mom says, I cannot believe this. You are exactly like my daughter. You remind me so much of her. And we were cracking up. It was obviously a huge compliment, but something that I feel then was more kismet and very, very meant to be as far as us coming together to make this show. And, I will say that I've seen Mitzi in stressful situations where she's having to handle people, right? And really juggle, her expertise with people who just don't get it. I watched her do that with so much patience and again, so much integrity and so much kindness. And you don't think a homicide detective is going to be that person, right? But the way I think that the reason she's been so successful is she knows how to get what she wants out of people because she has really mastered the art of the fact that people want to be heard. And because they're heard, they feel seen. And when they feel seen, they're going to open up to you. And she is a perfect example of the balance of that. And I watch her in awe, that type of patience that she has. I don't have that. I mean, I have a certain level of patience, but not to the level that I see in her that I admire so much. And so, yeah. And then obviously, just her career, this woman has caught 7 serial killers in her 30-year decorated career. And I was there. I heard all the speeches. I heard everyone speak about her. It's an honor to tell her story. It's an honor to tell the story of all these men and women who do this work. But what have I learned from her? God, the long answer is more than I ever expected.
One of the most interesting things, I think the fun aspect of the series is, you've kind of got the ragtag underdog unit that Ballard has, the volunteers, the people trying to help.
Sure.
The exasperation of being, evidence being left out for psychic connections.
Yeah.
Was it important to have those kind of lighter notes in the show to avoid it sort of being bogged down by like the grim subject detail? Because after all, you're investigating murders.
Right. And you have to find some levity where you can, right? And I mean, I remember reading Ballard's irritations and they always made me laugh because at the end of the day, she has to run a unit, right? And she's not here to like be people's emotional support animals, right? When they're doing something wrong, she has to tell them, right? And I remember I had a friend visiting during that scene one day on set, and she goes, "Oh my God, Mag, you're really mean to her." And I'm like, no, that's what leaders have to do. They have to tell people the truth, right? And so as long as you can find the humanity in that, and allow people the information that can inspire them to change those habits, I think you can have success. But it's a very fine line.
And obviously, I've managed to watch one of the episodes where Titus turns up, which I got to go, yay, woo. Are there any other characters from Bosch we've not seen yet in Ballard that you think would be a good fit for that side of Ellie?
Well, there's an episode probably coming that you haven't seen where there is another person that makes an appearance, which is really fun. And I mean, I really liked the actors on Bosch. I thought they did such a great job. And I put it out there. I've said to Michael and different people, like, I'm sure they want to move on and do different things in their career. But if any of them wanted to come on and support this effort, I would be all on board. I really think they did a great job and it'd be fun.
I will finish on just one thing, which was, I know that there's been a lot of sort of unhappiness, the fact that we never got to see more of Legacy, but it is what it is. It's nobody's problem anymore. I think the quality of the show will speak for itself, and it will make people realize this was a good call. That Ballard stand on its own. Do you feel any pressure from that respect, or do you think you can just focus on your show and kind of block out that external noise and just put on the best show you can?
Yeah, I remember when it happened. I remember the day it happened. I got the call and I remember feeling this overwhelming sadness for these people who I've come to love so much, and just the end of an era. And I remember, no pressure or anything, but one of the main producers said, "Mag, just so you know, you're now the only one carrying this universe forward. So let's do it." And I'm going, dude, really? What the hell? And that was, I think, the moment where I thought, oh gosh, you always think that you're going to have this support brother that's kind of near you and next to you that really, brought you into the fold. And then that went away. And I just thought, not that I wasn't serious about my job before that, but I just thought, how cool. I mean, what a freaking awesome opportunity to take what we know and move into, like I said earlier, this new decade of television and elevate this and do something different and prove that we can stand on our own. That's a challenge I like. I'm willing to that I'm up for.
Well, like I said before, congratulations on the show. I would wish you good luck. I don't think you'll need it.
Oh, that's kind of you. Thank you.
I think people are going to love it, and I can't wait to see you go for another 10 years as well. I have to say, what I really liked about the show, what I've seen so far, I didn't manage to watch all the screeners yet, but what I like is that, it doesn't feel like Bosch, and I mean that as a compliment. I love Bosch, so I thought this would be a mistake to try like a retread. So there's like a lightness of touch to it, and I like the dynamic as well between the characters. So was it important for you to create a show that existed in the Bosch world, but could easily exist in its own right?
Yeah, definitely. We just didn't want to extend Bosch and do the same thing. We wanted to, there's a lot of different things going on, but we wanted to explore other parts of Los Angeles that we kind of stayed away from. We wanted to be more on the ocean, which adds to that lightness, I think, that you were saying. And we wanted to build this for long-term success. We wanted it to be a show that stood on its own feet. I mean, it does borrow from Bosch. Bosch is even in it from time to time, but we definitely wanted it. The face of the show is Maggie Q, and we wanted her to run with it and be her own person and have her own show. So I think we accomplished that. If you keep watching it, I think you'll see it does. It's like in it, but not of it. It's its own entity.
Yeah, and you speak about Maggie Q there. As an author, do you still find it odd when you see people embodying your characters when you've probably had your own vision of them in your mind for so many years?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a thrilling thing, but it also kind of plays with what is kind of sacred about the writing and even the reading process, and that is the imagination. For Bosch, for example, I was writing about him for 20 years before suddenly this is what he looks like. So you're playing around with creativity, but it's just really fulfilling when you see what an actor like Maggie Q can bring to the role. What's unusual in this case was that so much of Maggie Q's real life is like Ballard's fictional life that I created before I knew Maggie Q or knew anything about her. And that, the whole idea about growing up in Hawaii, a father who stopped in Hawaii after serving in the Vietnam War and stayed. That's her story. And that was the same story I gave Ballard, 6 or 7 years ago when I first started writing about her. So that coincidence was really kind of eye-opening to me.
In your mind, obviously you created Ballard. What makes her tick? What is a successful day at the office like for her? Is it purely just solving a case, or is there more to it than that? There's
got to be more to it than that, and it's something I explore in the books. I can't really say this is what it is, but there is something. There's a resilience and a fierceness about her that comes from some place, and I think some of it comes from the obstacles she has had to overcome that are very female specific in law enforcement, for example. And I think there's I'll show them kind of mentality to it. And I think that motivates her a lot. But I mean, it comes down to a basic fairness Bosch has that idea that everybody counts or nobody counts, and that leads him to being the person he is. And I think she's a subscriber to that in a way. Is to her, it's about the unfairness of how crimes affect people, and her wanting to do something about that.
One of the most interesting and I think the most fun aspects of the series is sort of the ragtag kind of underdog nature of Ballard's unit. It's just people almost just trying to help. And her exasperation with evidence being left out for things like psychic connections. Was it important, you think, to have those lighter notes in the show so it didn't get too bogged down in like the grim detail of having to solve murders and, the depressing nature of that in itself?
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's showing what I've learned as a book writer and a TV producer, because you definitely got to get that mix. I mean, I think you're keying on something that's really part of the success of the show. And it is, you got to finesse these things. It's a dark world. You want to be accurate about that. You don't want to avoid that. But at the same time, you got to step back from it and be on a surfboard or have these funny anecdotal type things happen, because that is reflective of real life. But it also is the best way, I think, to present a show that is going to take people into some dark corners.
Obviously, we have a show that has been derived from Bosch, which, for good reason, it's been 10 years. It was a huge success, and the cancellation of Legacy obviously hit a lot of fans hard. Knowing that there's been petitions, attempts to get the show back, do you think that adds pressure on Ballard to perform, or can the Ballard crew and cast, can they only really focus on their show and block out the noise, because ultimately it's their story now?
Yeah, I mean, I think they have to, and I don't think it's that difficult. I mean, you're right. Some people were not expecting it, the end of Bosch Legacy, but I mean, it was 10 years of a show, and it's hard to argue with that. And I think it is time to kind of pivot and tell some new stories with a new face leading the way. But I think, I mean, I just think it's a natural progression that's going to work out. And I think, as far as it adding to the pressure on Ballard, I think, no, I think these are all professional people who are doing the best they can, and under whatever the circumstances were, they were going to do the best they can, and I think they've delivered. And I don't think there's an added pressure to succeed based on what happened with Bosch.
We've heard Titus talk about what season 4 of Legacy would have entailed with Bosch becoming a volunteer detective again. My question is actually, how, if at all, would Ballard have fitted in with that? Would she have appeared in the same way that Bosch appears in this series of, or this season of Ballard? Would there have been more crossover there?
I would hope so. I mean, it wasn't really discussed, but the last episode of Bosch Legacy had her in it. It was like an introduction to her, and there's a chemistry between those two. So I'm just saying, as a TV writer and producer, we would exploit that. It's like these two work together well. When they're on screen together, it's really interesting. So I would assume we would have done that. But we never really got even to a point. I mean, it's interesting that Titus had the 4th season worked out in his mind. I don't think we did. So because I think we're just used to like waiting to find out if you get the next season, and not spinning a lot of wheels to know till yes or no.
For people who are coming into this new, because there will be people who haven't seen Bosch before and come into this as a new series. What do you think, in your mind, just for people coming into it straight away, is the difference between Ballard and Bosch? What makes them really stand out, and then what are the similarities between them?
Well, I think they care. The connecting DNA is definitely Los Angeles and the LAPD, but it's definitely two different takes on it. I think the Bosch show is more kind of an isolated show. It's very like Hollywood centric, and the Ballard show, we wanted to expand. We wanted to be out on the ocean. We wanted, to be on beaches, and I think the Ballard show is a wider it appeals to a wider audience, if you ask me, and I think that's obviously a good thing. But at their core, they're really about people who are relentless at what they do, and you know, most viewers who watch these shows have not solved murders, but they have to connect somehow with these people who solve murders. And I think it's on their character levels of resilience and fierceness. Those connect both shows. I mean, you can ascribe that to the character of Bosch just as much as you can Ballard. And I think that's probably one of the rails that connect the two shows.
That's great. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm sure you won't need it, but all the best with the show.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.